There is a challenge that is coming from digital currencies such as blockchain technologies.
So I think it's important to share that anything can be tokenized.
All the money.
I like the idea of a gold standard. I mean, it could be used in a very cryptocurrency way.
Very much sooner than a lot of people understand or think. We will be all at a level playing field.
Hey, welcome to the show. I am very happy to have my friend Eli Sanchez join me today from California. Eli, it is great to see you. How have you been?
I am great, and it's great to see you, and I'm happy to be here. This is going to be fun.
Eli and I used to work together, and I talked to him every day for quite a long time, and it's been a minute, so I'm happy to see you and be able to connect with you again.
This is going to be good. Yeah, both of our backgrounds are slightly different than I remember them, but here we are, same people.
So what we're going to talk about today is scaling a business. So if you're not familiar with Eli, I'm going to have to tell his story in a second, but he's been the owner and operator of multiple different businesses across different sectors and kind of started this entrepreneurship journey in the world of fitness and owning actual physical brick and mortar gyms. And that's one of the toughest industries, especially during the COVID era when people weren't allowed to go places, but not only have your gyms survived that era, but they've gone on to thrive. So before we get into some of the topics kind of relating to how to sell a business or prepare for selling a business, Eli, catch us all up on your story and how you got to where you are today.
Yeah, 100%. And I'll try to keep it tight so it's not too boring. But the short version is in college, I was a college wrestler, and my brother was a jiu-jitsu black belt. And so we both were kind of in that grappling world. He was a jiu-jitsu guy, I was a wrestler, and he wanted to actually start the gyms because what he was doing, and I don't think you know this actually, he was a marketer. So this was back in like 2008 when there wasn't a lot of people running like lead forms. That wasn't a common thing.
Okay.
Building your own website was hard. There wasn't like, all these Squarespace and Wix.com and easy ClickFunnels wasn't huge and everything. And so we were marketers. And so we were really good at getting a bunch of leads for anything. And so we started actually getting leads for randomly gyms. And there was like a gym in Texas where we got them something like 150 new members. And so the natural thing was like, okay, well, we could probably do this ourselves. Instead of just market for other people, we could probably do this ourselves. No one was doing it. And so right at the same time that my brother wanted to open this gym, and we didn't know what it would be at the time, it was just a group class type jiu-jitsu gym.
Okay.
I was in wrestling in college and they dropped my wrestling program. So I had 2 more years left, Division I wrestling scholarship, and the whole school dropped the entire program. And so I was like, this is a sign. Let's move back from Virginia to California, open the gym. The gym had been open for a couple months now. Okay. And then the short version is within 2 years, we opened our second location. 2 years after that, third location. I think within 7.5 years, we had 5 locations. We're averaging about $250K a month. So that was like the gym world. Okay. And then from there, as you know, I became kind of a business coach and coached gyms all over the world, and now more of a consultant.
So COVID affected a lot of brick and mortar businesses. Like what happened with the gyms for you guys during that time?
It was crazy. It was you live in California, especially where we were, legally you couldn't have a gym. And so we had 1,000 members, active members, 1,000 people paying us $200 a month. And we had to convince 1,000 people that were paying for a gym. You actually don't even need a gym. Come to our online classes. You're just as good. And so we had to literally do that. We had to convince 1,000 families that way more important than the location is the system that we teach, the community that's unlike anywhere else, our strategies of how to help you reach your goals, and this new exciting Facebook group that you should join. And so we had to really honestly convince people for months that they didn't need our gym and to pay us $200 a month still to work out online through Zoom.
Oh, wow. Now, when the gyms opened back up, did you continue the online stuff?
Yeah, 100%. And the cool thing, it was kind of a blessing for us, some of the things that happened with COVID, because we had to pay rent, but no one could be there at our gym. And so we were on these leases. So there was like renegotiation of leases. And there was, reallocation of resources and condensing the team. We had 70 employees at one point, and so when there's huge kind of reset happened, we were able to kind of lean down because we had to, and we found out more efficient ways to do everything. So it actually improved a lot of processes and actually improved our profit too.
Interesting. So now you're in the world of more consulting type content businesses. How does that compare to running a physical location business?
There's a ton of similarities that every businesses have, except there's a lot of, if you're doing like an online company or like a coaching company, or a lot of the world that we're in where it's like consulting, there's just way less small headaches, like, oh, the toilet paper ran out type of headaches, like, oh, we got someone broke the glass type of thing, like, you don't have to worry about fire department making sure your security and alarms are up to date and you have to buy a new fire extinguisher, like little things that there's 100 things every single month that you forget you have to do with a brick and mortar. It's less of those, but they're all the same as far as the big pillars. Like, it's always about, you have to be good at selling, you have to be good at automation, you have to have good numbers, you have to be good at building relationships. The cores, I think, are always the same levers.
Let's talk about selling. So I just interviewed Tanner the other day and asked him what the most important thing was. And first thing he says is sales, which is something I totally believe as well. So how did you learn how to get good at sales? What was your process?
There was a few different things. I've studied a lot of sales. For people who don't know, I've studied like under so many different sales coaches, but I've also studied like therapies that help teach people why people do what they do. I've studied hypnosis. I've studied NLP. I've studied, as you know, like the interrogation, body language, like anything to do with it. Kind of geeked out over it. And I've trained tens of thousands of people in the last couple of years in sales. So I've done it a lot, done a lot of sales stuff. I think I was naturally decent at it. Like my high school, I don't think you know this either. My high school had like a mandatory magazine sales drive. I took first in the whole school, and then I was like supposed to be
like a fundraising thing to sell the magazines.
You had to sell like a minimum of 10 magazines at your school. Everyone had to do it, but there was some reward system. Like if you sell 10 magazines, you get $10 in Subway sandwiches. But if you sell like 100 magazines, it's not 10 times more. It was like 2x what you would have got. Like the incentives kept doubling.
Wow.
I was like a hungry, starving wrestler. And so I was like, free like Jamba Juice and Subway, I'll be the number one in the whole school.
Amazing.
Yeah. So I think I've always had a little bit of the sales background, but it wasn't until a few years later where I actually went through professional sales training.
And for those of you watching, Eli's being very modest about his sales ability. I often tell people that you're one of the most gifted salespeople I know. And one of the reasons is you come across as very unassuming. Like you're not this kind of like boiler room alpha, like aggressive, your typical corporate sales guy, like stereotype. But your ability to change someone's beliefs like on the fly are like incredible. And
thank you.
So I do want to talk about beliefs in a second. But back to the business thing for it. So learning how to sell has been really important. What else do you think are critical skills for sort of building a successful business aside from sales?
That's a good question. I was doing a talk probably about 6 months ago. A company called me in and asked if I'd do like a free talk to their inner circle. And it's really relevant to what you're talking about. I kind of broke it into like, here's what I did to make my first 100K. Here's what we did to make our first million. Here's how we made our first 10 million. And the way we set it up is interesting that Tanner said it is the first 100K that we made is because we knew how to sell. And then the first million we made was because we knew how to automate. And the first 10 million was because we got good at relationships and partnerships.
Oh, interesting. So let's talk about automation for a second, because I think the magic of technology often sounds really cool, but I think sometimes people rush to automate before they've actually figured out a process that works. Like they want to automate before they know what to automate. So what are some of the things that you figured out how to automate that were game changers for you?
Just the speed of like leads, for example. The moment someone fills out a form, you automatically text them, you automatically email them, you automatically nurture them. The moment someone goes in, I forgot where I heard this, but maybe 15 years ago, I remember a business coach saying the distinction between a good company and a great company. A good company, some days they're world class and some days they're awful. Whereas a great company is just consistently good. If you're always good, like the worst you ever are is good, you're never bad, you become great. And so it's about like consistency. And
Okay.
so we automated like the client experience. And so the moment someone would join, instead of us hoping to remember to tell them our story, we'd automate an email that would tell them our story. We'd automate a text message that would go out to the owner of that location or the gym manager
Okay.
and tell them, hey, this person just signed up, give them a welcome call. And so it was like automating the client experience. We would automate on day 4, we knew people would have certain resistances on their first week, and that's when we'd get the most refunds. Because
Okay.
people join a gym, imagine someone who hasn't worked out in 2 years, they're nervous, they don't feel like they're athletic enough or in shape. And so we would send an automatic email, and in that email was a video of a girl saying, I remember being so scared. I didn't feel like I was in shape. I was nervous. I didn't feel like I fit in, but everyone was so nice to me. And then I ended up losing 35 pounds. And so we would like work our way backwards on what we didn't want to happen.
Okay.
And then we'd automate little things on the client experience. The trick that we would do, by the way, and this is, I think, useful, is you'd write out the full perfect customer experience, like the perfect client lifecycle from the moment they say I'm interested to the moment you have to kind of upsell them to the next product.
Okay.
And we'd put things in 3 columns, literally just on like a Google sheet. And it would like, here's everything that should happen. And then
Okay.
we'd write, what things does like the owner have to do? Like maybe that welcome call means more if it's the owner, right? So maybe the owner has to do that. But what else can you delegate and what else can you automate? So the first thing is just automate as many things as you can, delegate the rest out. And then the only couple things that the gym manager owner has to do, they would still do. But that ends up becoming like their recipe, I think, to scale.
That's incredible. It also sounds like a lot of the things you were doing, people might not have been expecting and maybe wouldn't have been a big deal if you had not done them. But when you do them, they're just this extra touch that makes the client or customer feel appreciated and welcomed.
100%. Yeah, like you start with being better, right? You try to be better than your competitors. And so here's an example. The moment someone would join, the first week, the salesperson would write down specific notes about that person. She's a mother of 2, her kids play soccer, for example. And
Okay.
then we would write a handwritten thank you note with like maybe 3 movie tickets for her, the single mom, and the 2 kids. And then on day 7, they would do their weekly checkup. We'd give them that little handwritten note about, their kids playing soccer, little things like that. Like we were always trying to be the best we could be and stand out above our competition, but we would forget to do that every once in a while. And so we're like, oh, we got to automate a process. So we would automate 2 things. One, a message that would go out to the manager on day 7 and say, make sure, insert person's name that signed up 7 days ago, make sure Molly Elmore gets her private gift. And then we would have an automation on the other side where the gym owner would be able to check and say, did that person get the gift? And so you see how like that's our way we would automate things that would make a better client experience. Pretty cool, right?
Totally cool. Especially when, I've been in businesses where we start out with these great intentions and you do those things, and then something comes along and you're just busy and it wasn't anyone's like ill intent to stop doing them. You just kind of forget, which is why I think automating that stuff is so key, because sometimes you just run out of gas after
Oh,
a
yeah.
like honeymoon period of doing those things. But to have an automation set up, just it's like insurance. So like you don't need to remember. It's just done for you.
Yeah, it's not necessary to try to hope that someone's going to do that thing, right? It's like we're going to have bad days, and so just automate as much. You'll like this one. Here's one that we did. The technology, a lot of people know about it now, but it was brand new, maybe like 2014, where you could automatically send out voice notes as if they're voicemails to people. So automatic voicemails
Oh,
were
wow.
new. And
Okay.
so what we did is we triggered on our CRM a voicemail of everyone singing happy birthday. So it was like 5 of us. We all just sang happy birthday once, didn't put in the person's name. We just sang happy birthday. But then
Right.
on people's birthday, they got an automatic text message and it said, check your voicemail and your email. The voicemail was us all singing happy birthday to them. And then the email was a picture we did. We put a smash shirt on, a little cartoon, and said, come get your free t-shirt and a surprise gift for your birthday. So they would wake up at like 7 a.m. on their birthday and have a voicemail of us singing happy birthday. It's all automated. We didn't have to do any of it. But for them, they're like, there's no one like you.
They're like, my gym actually cares about me. No one else cares about me. No one else has
Yeah.
sent me any birthday cards but my gym.
Yeah. And that would have been a full-time job, after having 1,000 members to do that consistently, or you can
Right.
automate it.
And is the
Yes.
gym still using all that stuff years later?
Yeah. I would say there's probably, so many things got improved too with automation. Before I was using like Infusionsoft. And so there was like 3,000 different like potential bubbles that could happen. I like built it myself. And then now there's like things that do it for you. So a lot of it's it's even improved now.
Now, do you use those same automations in your coaching businesses just to kind of keep things smooth?
It depends. It depends what people are using. My clients are a little bit bigger now.
Okay.
People went from paying me $200K a month to $50,000, and
Right.
so there's different types of things, different problems that they have.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, for the most part, a lot of it is just the same thing. You figure out what's the perfect experience that a client can have, and then like what can you automate, what can you delegate, and then what do you actually have to do?
What a great philosophy for client service, because it's I think a lot of people have those intentions and would like to do it, but you don't have the resources. So if you don't have like if you don't have a staff to do it, automate.
Yeah. And it's like proven too what makes a happy customer. Like it's not like this big mysterious thing. You could get feedback from your customers and they're telling you what their expectations are. And so you just have to like come up with a plan that meets their expectations and then has all these bonuses of unexpected bonuses. So it's better than their expectations, and turns out you're a great company.
And sometimes just making people feel special or appreciated or even just acknowledged
Yes.
is more than every other business does. So you can stand out by just caring.
Yeah, you said a good word there, appreciated. One thing that I did, I think this is really relevant along the ideas of like scaling and automation and putting this all together, is I looked at like the data of the goal is to try to make clients happy. And so I started looking like who are the best people at like making people find happiness. And I was like studying all these different types of therapy, like Gestalt therapy, like NLP therapy, like cognitive behavioral therapy. And I went down this, like all these courses, just learning about therapy and how to make people happy. And it turns out there's like 95% of patients that go through therapy, there's 7 of the same things that people need. And if you have these 7 things, almost everyone in the world is happy. And one of them is making sure people feel appreciated. But I could go over the 7, but the cool part was
please.
it's so cool. I found out, I'm like, okay, if 95% of this makes people happy, let's add this into our client experience.
Yeah.
So we can have way happier clients. And it's like making people feel appreciated. So it's like handwritten thank you note that says something personalized to it, and you start coming up with like, here's a list of 10 ideas to make them feel appreciated.
Okay.
Making sure people feel excited. Like a big reason why people start feeling the need for something new, like leaving their gym or leaving, it's because it's the same monotonous thing. So you have to have something they're looking forward to.
Okay.
Like some event or some test or some graduation or the next level up, whatever it is. So making sure people feel excited.
Okay.
The third one, similar but distinct in the sense that it's making sure people feel included. And so we wanted to make sure people didn't feel like they were just the outcast in our gym. And so they needed to feel part of this whole thing. And so we're like, what can we do? Well, on day 1, when someone shows up for their first class, we'll make them check in. We'll walk them to introduce them to the instructor. So there's that connection. And then we'll introduce them to a minimum of 3 people. So it's
Okay.
forming like these social bonds on day one, so they feel included. They don't feel outcasted. You know, the fourth one was variety. People needed options.
Mm.
And so if every day it's like you have to do 10 push-ups, it's the same exact warm-up. You have to do this, you have to do this, you have to eat chicken and rice every day, and then eventually you lose 40 pounds and have your confidence. People just aren't going to do it.
Right.
And so you had to create different ways for them to co-author their experience, give them options, do checkups with them, and get feedback from them, and then say, well, based off your feedback, here's the updated plan. And so they would feel like there's this like co-authored experience for them.
Okay.
Makes people feel happy. And the other 3 were super obvious. This is like, you'd come up with them if I just asked you, like, what's the physical things people need to feel happy? And it's sleep, nutrition, exercise.
Okay.
Those
Wow, a
are
great list.
obvious, right?
Obviously, some of them don't apply to all businesses types, but if you had that
Course.
list and at least tried to figure out which of these are really relevant to our offer and how can we make sure that
Yeah.
these clients feel excited, feel appreciated, they'll spice it up a little bit so it doesn't get monotonous, have a little bit of novelty in there.
Is huge for us. Yeah. Because the problem that most companies look at is they're trying to look at like more sales. How do I get more leads and more sales on the front end? But retention is so much more important, you know?
Right. It's so much easier to keep a client happy than it is to get a new one. I think a lot of people don't understand how difficult it is to get clients sometimes. Yeah.
Totally.
Wow. Let's talk about scaling for a second. So you went through this process of building multiple gyms. And so each step of the way, I'm sure, brought some new challenges. So if you had to kind of teach somebody a philosophy around scaling a business, like what would you include in that?
One of the main things is the kind of what we talked about, just clearly defining what's supposed to happen. So there's no guesswork. Like literally every part of the client lifecycle is pre-planned.
So you had documents that like, this is the client journey?
100%, without a doubt. Like it was, everyone knew exactly what the documents were. And that's just kind of part of like what I would say, like the plan.
Okay.
One thing is kind of cheesy is we would call it, I called it the 5 P's to profit.
Okay.
And you got to start with your purpose, right? Because if every employee, say you want to go from gym 1 to gym 2 or company 1 to, you know, a second department, they all need to be aligned with the purpose.
Okay.
And so the first thing was just making sure everyone was aligned with their purpose. In our sense, it was helping people fight heart disease, high blood pressure, diabetes, depression, confidence issues. Like we're really clear that by us helping people with exercise and fitness, that it resulted in this. So
Okay.
we really were aligned with that kind of North Star. But none of the stuff that I'm about to share with you next like matters unless people are bought in on that purpose and mission, you know?
Okay.
So it's like the 5 P's. Number 1, your purpose. Number 2, you come up with a plan where it's like, okay, well, how does the gym work? You have these 3 different products. How do we get leads? You know, Facebook. How do you get, you know, signups? You need a salesperson, like just an overall plan. And there's a structure for that.
Okay.
Purpose, plan. And then after you have the plan, then you find the people. And I've seen businesses make that mistake a lot where they find the people first. They're like, Johnny's awesome. And my brother-in-law is really friendly. And I have to, his niece is coming with us. And you're like, where do I place this person? You know, like you're trying to find a role for the person. So first you need your plan and then you find the people to execute that plan.
Okay.
And then once you have that, you have like the structure of like a machine that would work. Then you have to track performance. So the 4th was performance. And that's like KPIs and like, we're supposed to be at this dollar per lead. We're supposed to get X amount of show rates per call. We're supposed to get X amount of upsells. We're supposed to get, you know, like you just have your baseline expectations.
Okay.
So you're tracking performance and then finally is profit.
Okay.
And so what that is if all these things are in place, good purpose, clearly defined plan, you have the right people performing the way you want them to perform, then you just increase the levers, like increasing the average order value. How much can you charge? How often can you charge these people? Instead of charging them, say, like once a month, can you do like once every 4 months, these events where you get them on these other things, you know, like increasing installments, and then increasing just the amount of clients you have overall.
Now, you had a unique situation that you owned these businesses with other people. So did you ever have challenges with these 5 Ps getting everyone to buy in on all of them?
It was in a good spot because people were buying not just the idea to run a gym, because we had other gym owners that would buy in to a certain location. They could be part owner of one of the locations,
Okay.
but they were buying into 2 ideas. One, that they could run a business doing what they love. Like they were, say, a world champion kickboxer that had nothing to do with business at all.
Okay.
And so what they were buying was our expertise, because they knew that we had figured this out.
Okay.
So there wasn't a lot of like resistance to our methods. I think people really bought in that we were those guys that figured out, gyms. There's always people issues, we're making sure people work well with each other and like clearly defined roles and stuff. But we learned, I think we got really good going from gym 1 to gym 2, because that's where, if it's like, say, Molly and Eli, and we're like really good at working together, we know how each other's works, we know like who has what strengths, and so we could run a gym on our own. But then we go tell 2 other people to do it. There's a bunch of little problems that you don't realize, like people problems. Like maybe they just don't understand how to properly manage people. Maybe they're micromanaging, so there's like, we had to learn those things on how to teach people how to be better managers and better coaches and stuff. But going from gym 2 to 3 or 3 to 4 was way easier because it was all figured out by then.
So just to paraphrase, it sounded like when it was one location, it was fairly easy because you were just good at stuff. And so you could do it. But when you went to 2 locations and you couldn't be in 2 locations at once, that's when this concept of delegating and training came along. What do you think was like the hardest part about running a business that you couldn't be in all the time?
It's a really good question. I think the natural answer is you do lose control, because you can't fix everything, and that's part of it. But the answer was, and we would say this a lot, is like there's an SOP for everything. Like there is like a standard operating procedure for everything. And so whenever there was like a question, instead of me just giving the answer, like someone's like, "Hey Eli, how do I deal with this thing?" My mind was always like, how do I create a procedure for how to deal with those type of things? And so after we got all the procedures done, it's like 95% of it is we can hold your hand through,
Just need to make a recipe book for all the recipes.
Yeah, and they don't stick to it perfectly, but at least it's there so when they could fall back on it. So an example of that was, we had a handbook, and it was literally like minute by minute what that job role was supposed to do. Like when you walk in, here's what you could do. You would first, like, there's just 10 things to do it in this order. Like literally, first minute is turning on the lights, and then it's making sure X works, and then it's making sure, then you start by answering voicemails and then emails, and then you follow up with everyone, then you write the thank you letters, and then you call the leads in that order, or whatever the order was. But it was literally like, here's the exact order of what you should do. Now, if someone walked in the gym that they weren't expecting and plans changed, cool. But at least it was listed out so that
you could ever say, well, I never knew what to do.
Yeah. And it helps with people problems. So then when mean manager goes to say like, hey, here's what you were supposed to do, it's not the manager saying it. It's like, here's what the system says. I'm not being mean. I'm just kind of reminding you of here's the process to follow.
Got it. Yeah, I can see that can help with conflict resolution because there's no like, it was pretty clear. It was written in the document that this was what you're supposed to do.
Yeah, it's not me saying it. It's what the document says.
So I can't be on Zoom with you without talking about some belief stuff because we could geek out on this stuff all day. So tell me what's going on with you and understanding persuasion, influence, belief shifting, and how it affects business and sales, like what you've been thinking about lately in this space.
That's so fun. It's such a big question too, right? Because that's like there's so many different branches of that tree. But one thing that's really powerful is this concept, like Charlie Munger talks about it. It's inverse thinking. And it's like figuring out what you don't want to happen, and then you work your way backwards. So this is relevant with beliefs, and it's relevant with business. You figure out what you don't want to happen, And then you work your way backwards. Like, what do you not want? Well, I don't want a client to join in the first week and then say, you know what, I rushed into this decision and I ask for a refund.
Okay.
And so because I know that, I think, well, what are the beliefs this person needs to have so that they're less likely to want a refund?
Okay.
And so we'd plant little belief seeds earlier in their experience so that they would come up with the conclusions that we want them to come up with. So an example of that is if we have someone who says, we don't want someone to say they want a refund. And so literally the moment after someone signs up, we say, I know we talked about a lot of different things. I'm curious of all the things that we talked about, and they were great, exciting things. What are you most excited about? And the person would say, well, I'm excited about X. I'm excited about maybe losing 10 pounds, getting my energy levels up. And they would start telling me the reasons why they made a good decision. So I'm planting this space for them to build beliefs.
And are you still doing this like on the sales call, or like in the initial meeting?
Right after we get their credit card.
Okay.
Yeah, because two things would happen. And we worked our way backwards. The one was like on day 5 or something, some people wouldn't show up even though they signed up. But the sales process was just so good that they like had no reason not to say no or not to say I'm in. So they'd sign up. And then they would like send an email like 5 days later, like, hey, send me a refund. And so people started saying that they kind of, wanted a refund. By me asking and working my way backwards, that inverse thinking, by me saying, well, what are you most excited about? They would tell me why they made a good decision in that moment.
So you're mitigating the risk of buyer's remorse.
Yeah, because they could come up with the belief that that wasn't a good product for me. Maybe there was a good salesperson and I rushed into it. It wasn't a good product. But by me building that space for them to tell me why they made that decision and what they're excited about, it almost fills that void of I could have used that $1,000 or $500 for other things. It's like, here's what that $1,000 for, because I'm excited about X, Y, and Z. But here's where I really like the checkmate question, because that we tracked it all. And so we could say like, look, we used to get, say, 60 signups a month at $1,000 of new signups, but then 4 of those every month we knew, just without a doubt, 4 of them would ask for a refund. And then it like almost eliminated refunds when we did that by just asking people what they're most excited about, except there'd be a couple people that would call in or send an email and they'd say, hey, I loved everything about the sales process and I loved the product and I'm in, but can you just refund me and I'll come back in like 3 months? It's a little too soon. It's not the right time. And so we're like, we're still getting that issue. How do I work my way backwards? So like, how do I prevent someone who says, I love the product, it's just not the right time? So we literally just have 2 questions. Question number 1, what are you most excited about? Question number 2, I love that you're excited about those things. I'm curious, so like, why did you decide to do this now and not wait like 6 months? And they would be like, well, here's why I decided to sign up now. 0 refunds. Because we are working our way backwards. We figured out the beliefs that they could have that would make them want to quit. We figured out the beliefs that they would have that may make them want to refund. And we just worked our way backwards to prevent those beliefs from occurring.
You know what I love about this and so many belief things is like, they're so logical. Like, of course, that makes so much sense, but most people don't set up a strategy to do that, which is why that's so brilliant. And probably had a significant impact over the long term on the bottom line of the business to minimize those refund requests.
Yeah, and the thousands of lives changed too, of people who were just normal people that didn't trust themselves, that were always going back and forth on their decisions. We probably helped that person solidify a decision, maybe for the first time ever, and then we ended up helping them too. Yeah, the fun idea is on sales calls. What happens? People say it's too expensive, or let me shop around, let me talk to my wife. So you know what those things are already. And so if someone says like, hey, let me shop around, or let me see if I can get it a little bit cheaper, or let me do my due diligence, like that's a common thing that can still happen. So all we have to do is work our way backwards, create a belief that there is no one comparable. And so how can you do that? It's like, well, 1, I got to tell them how we're different, show how we're unique. show that we have this specialized knowledge or this uniqueness to our company. And then 2, get them to admit they see how we're different. So what we teach, this is tactical, but anyone who has a business is like, oh, I can see how I can use this. What we teach is something called a category of one statement. And so you have all these category of one statements about the products you use. And it could sound something along the lines of like, whatever you're selling. So you're selling hypnosis, just some random example. You're selling some hypnosis product that helps people get confident. You can say, now, one of the interesting things, and somehow every confidence program out there, they failed to include one of the most important aspects, and then insert what you do. So you're saying somehow every hypnosis program, every confidence program out there in the world, they fail to include one of the most fundamental, crucial aspects, which is, and then you say what you do.
Okay.
You're creating a distinction between you and everyone else. And then you simply just ask, and can you see how that's a little bit different than the approaches you might have seen in the past? And they're like, yeah, I could see why it's different. So now they're telling you that you're different. They're telling you that you're in a category of one, and they can't compare you to other people because you're the only one that offers that now. What does that do? It creates this belief that they can't get what you have anywhere else, which results in preventing them from saying, let me shop around. Yeah, cool. You just work your way backwards.
Brilliant. Yeah,
Simple.
I love it. And again, very logical. Like, of course, why wouldn't you do such a brilliant idea? But very few people take the time to actually figure out how do you do it, and then to be consistent enough to do it in the business. So
100%. And one of the things that we kind of always, I end up finding with my consulting clients or businesses is we always just figure out, like, you have this goal, whether say you're running a virtual event and you're trying to sell 10,000 people on some $1,000 offer. You have the goal of getting them to buy that offer. Our job isn't to see if they're qualified. The best job you have is to help them feel qualified. So, like, what are the beliefs that they need so that they will buy? And what they need to believe this about investments. They need to believe this about time. They need to believe this about, their own capabilities. And then once you create all the list of beliefs, then you just work your way backwards. Just like we talked about, and you like insert things to build them into that person who's more likely to take action and sign up.
I love it. You're right. In order for every buyer to buy something, they have to believe something about the product and about themselves to go through with that decision. And if you know your product and your market well enough, you should be able to list out at least 5 beliefs that somebody should have. And if you come up with a system to implant those beliefs, whether it's through marketing, maybe a video people watch before a sales call, or if you do it on the sales call, you're probably going to minimize your risk of those beliefs being a problem, if not outright remove the risk of those beliefs completely.
Bingo. Yeah, 100%. We teach something that's called the trust trinity, and you just named 2 of them, right? People need to trust the product. They need to trust that they're a good fit for the product, and they need to trust you, the speaker, whoever's talking about the product, or they're not even going to be willing to learn about it. And if you hit that trust trinity, then you're helping them gain trust that this is a good decision.
Because if people, before it's time to voice that decision, if they have all of those beliefs, and they can't even talk themselves out of it because all the things they need to believe are in place.
You showed them why it's the right time. You showed them how you're different. They showed them that this was the missing link. You showed them that time is more important than money, all the different beliefs. And so you literally how do people make decisions? People make decisions based off the information in their head. So you put all this information in their head, the relevant information, and then they come up with this decision, and there's no logical or emotional reasons for them not to sign up. And they sign up.
Remove all objections by just managing beliefs.
That's it. That's the game.
That's the game. Well, thank you, my friend. It was a pleasure to speak with you as always. I appreciate you taking the time.
So great to see you. That was fun.
And if people want to kind of follow your wisdom, like what's a good place for people to keep up with what Eli's doing?
I would say Facebook. It's still the social media game that we're playing. And so message me on Facebook. I get people to reach out to me every single day. So hit me up on Facebook.
All right. Well, thank you, sir. It was always great to catch up with you and listen to your nuggets of wisdom.
Great to see you, Molly. Bye-bye.